The year was 2013. I'd just survived 3 years at a boys' secondary school in Lusaka and I graduated. Now, my family wanted to take me to church. My uncle had convinced them that I was possessed by a demon. How else could they explain my feminine gender expression? I'd been raised as a boy, but that's not who I was. I was a trans woman. I am a trans woman. They just wouldn't accept it. On this particular Sunday morning, my mom's Pentecostal church was packed. The pastor called me up to the altar and started praying for me. He said, "Spirit of the darkness, come out and leave him alone." The pastor bellowed. My parents' faces glowed with the hopes that I would be delivered from the female spirit that had possessed me. But I wasn't possessed. The spirit inside was my natural spirit. They just wouldn't accept it. They wouldn't accept me. All is well now, the pastor suddenly announced. His work was apparently done, the demon supposedly gone, but I didn't feel any supernatural shift. I didn't feel any different. I just felt ashamed and embarrassed. My family and this pastor made me feel inhuman in front of a church sanctuary full of family, friends, neighbors, and strangers, just for simply being myself. A month passed after my deliverance ceremony, and I was still the same. I was still the same. My gender expression hadn't changed. My gender identity hadn't changed. I was still the trans woman I was always meant to be. I started reflecting on the humiliation my family and church had subjected me to. As part of the healing process, I started writing poems and speeches about human rights, about how everyone on this planet is a beautifully and wonderfully created piece of art. I didn't want anyone else to be deemed inhuman because of their sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression. I read my writings out aloud, alone in my room, preaching to an imaginary audience. I didn't know a real audience was waiting to hear me someday. Then 2 years later, in 2015, a friend of mine introduced me to TBZ, an organization that works to address the needs of transgender and intersex persons across the country. TBZ invited me to a human rights focus group where we discussed some of the legal and social challenges which trans and gender diverse persons face. We also brainstormed on ways to improve our safety and quality of life. This was my first time interacting with so many trans people. I realized we all share similar struggles, stories, and hopes for a better future. Being around other trans people who understood me so well was very inspiring for me. It sent me on a journey to create more safe spaces and positive social environments that welcomed and nurture sexual and gender diversity. Today, I work as a Programs and Advocacy Officer for Moto Center of Culture, an artistic youth-led organization that uses media advocacy tools to accelerate the human rights and visibility of sexual and gender minorities in Zambia. In short, we use art to spark change. Since our founding in 2017, Umoto has engaged with more than 40 queer poets, artists, musicians, writers, and photographers who challenge patriarchal norms, values, beliefs, and structures that restrict our human rights. We also produce videos and documentaries that highlight the harassment and violence LGBTI+ persons face in Zambia. As part of this process, we train young people to document their own fight for human rights. Umoto Center of Culture is now a true community of queer activists. Our fight is growing. but we know it's the only way to give ourselves and the future generations of sexual and gender minorities a fair shot at equality and happiness. Thank you so much. May peace and light be with you all.